My family ignored me for years. Now they want everything from me, but I finally said no. Anyway, I want to talk about something I've never really said out loud before, not fully. I'm Melanie, the youngest of 5. And for most of my life, I've felt like a ghost in my own family. There's a term I came across a few years ago, glass child. It means someone who's healthy and stable while their siblings deal with chronic illnesses, mental disorders, or disabilities, and because of that, the parents don't really see them. That was me. Completely. I was born 14 years after my closest brother. 14 years. By the time I showed up, my parents were already deep into raising kids with complicated needs. My oldest sister had epilepsy. My other brother had bipolar disorder, diagnosed young. One sister had debilitating anxiety that turned into agoraphobia when she hit her teens. And the brother closest to me in age, if you can even call 14 years close, struggled with a mix of ADHD and some undiagnosed mood thing that caused him to lash out a lot. Our house was constant noise. Doctor's appointments, therapy sessions, ER visits, screaming arguments, emergency meds, people storming out or locking themselves in rooms. I learned early how to stay out of the way. No one told me to be invisible. But I understood pretty quickly that if I was quiet, if I didn't cause problems, they'd leave me alone. And I don't mean in a mean way, not at first, anyway. It was more like survival. The less noise I made, the less likely it was that I'd be caught in the crossfire of someone else's meltdown. So I became really good at entertaining myself. We didn't have much money, even though my dad had a decent job. Most of it went to medical stuff or fixing the car after my brother took it out and crashed it during a manic episode, or paying for specialized schooling. So I never expected fancy things, but I had books. Tons of them. I had my mom's old laptop once she upgraded. It was slow as hell, but it ran The Sims and old point-and-click adventure games. That was enough for me. I'd sit in my room with the door closed, building fake families, or reading entire fantasy trilogies in a weekend. I discovered YouTube when I was 9 and fell in love with movie reviews and gaming walkthrough. I knew the exact times when everyone else would be asleep, distracted, or out of the house. That's when I'd sneak into the living room and watch a DVD. I still remember watching The Matrix for the first time on our crappy hand-me-down TV while the rest of the family was at the hospital with my sister after a seizure. I wasn't neglected in the way some people are. I had food, clothes. I got taken to the doctor if I had a fever. But emotionally? I was running on empty. No one asked how I was doing, not really. If I brought home a good grade, the response was, "That's great, Mel. Can you help me with your brother's homework?" If I was upset about something, the answer was usually, "We'll talk later," but later never came. One year, I won a writing contest at school. First place. I stayed up until midnight writing the story in my notebook. It was about a girl who was invisible and could walk through walls, but she chose not to because she wanted someone, anyone, to notice her. My English teacher cried when she read it. I brought the certificate home, proud for once. I handed it to my mom while she was making dinner. She barely glanced at it. "That's nice, honey," she said, before yelling upstairs for my brother to take his meds. I remember standing there in the kitchen, holding that piece of paper like it was supposed to mean something. And it did to me. But not to anyone else. I think the saddest part is that I never even got angry about it. I internalized all of it. I told myself they were doing their best. That I was lucky not to be sick. That I should be grateful. And I was. But also, I was lonely. So lonely it hurt sometimes. So, where I left off, everything started to change when I was 10 years old. That's when I met Cindy and Brooke. It was the first day of 5th grade, and we ended up sitting at the same table in class. I don't even remember how we started talking, but it was easy with them, like breathing. By the end of the week, we were already sitting together at lunch and walking home in a pack, even though we lived in different parts of town. What brought us together wasn't just that we liked the same books or laughed at the same jokes. It was something deeper than that, even if we didn't have the words for it back then. All 3 of us had problems at home. Not the same kinds of problems, but enough that we recognized the tiredness in each other's eyes. Enough that we understood what it meant when someone said, "I'm fine," but they clearly weren't. Cindy's parents were always fighting. Screaming matches that shook the windows, her mom threatening to leave, her dad punching holes in the walls. Brooke's mom was addicted to pills and spent most days passed out on the couch or yelling at her for no reason. We were just kids, but we became each other's refuge. We did everything together. Sleepovers weren't just about popcorn and movies. They were escape. Nights when no one had to lock their bedroom door or hide under blankets to block out the yelling. We built forts and whispered secrets inside them, created elaborate backstories for imaginary characters, and made promises that we'd always be there for each other. And we kept those promises. We got through middle school with each other's support, carried each other through high school when things got harder at home, when Cindy's parents divorced and Brooke's mom overdosed and had to go to rehab. We helped each other study for exams, ran interference with teachers when one of us was having a bad day, shared textbooks and notebooks and jackets when someone forgot theirs. When we graduated, we wore matching bracelets that we made the night before, swearing we'd never take them off. We applied to the same universities, and we ended up at one in-state, 2 hours from home. We shared a dorm freshman year, then got an off-campus apartment sophomore year. There were late-night study sessions, early morning hangovers, crying fits over boys, over family, over nothing at all. But we always had each other. When I got sick sophomore year and had to miss a week of classes, it was Cindy who brought me soup and helped me catch up. When Brooke had a panic attack during finals, I sat with her on the floor of the bathroom while Cindy ran to get her inhaler. We were a team, always. And when we graduated, we stood together on the stage, shoulder to shoulder in our caps and gowns, holding hands so tight it left mark. My parents didn't come. I didn't even expect them to, not really. They sent a message that morning, "Congratulations. Proud of you." That was it. The three of us moved to another state after that. We wanted a fresh start, somewhere new, somewhere we could really build something for ourselves. We found a 2-bedroom apartment in a city neither of us had been to before, got jobs, started figuring out how to be adult. It wasn't always easy. Money was tight, the jobs weren't great, and we had to get used to being on our own. But we had each other, and that made all the difference. My relationship with my parents stayed what it had always been, formal, distant. Once every few months, I'd get a message from my mom. "How's work?" Or, "How's school going?" Never anything deeper than that. No calls. No visits. They didn't ask if I was happy. They didn't know who my friends were. They didn't know what my favorite show was, or what I was struggling with. I think if someone had asked them, they wouldn't have been able to tell you more than 5 things about my life. But Cindy and Brooke? They knew everything. They knew the name of the boy I had a crush on in high school. They knew my fears, my habits, my favorite tea. They were the ones who held my hand during every heartbreak, who stayed up all night with me after my first panic attack, who celebrated every little win with me like it was a championship. They were my real family. The kind that chose me. The kind that saw me. The kind that stayed. It was a few days before Thanksgiving, and I was finishing up work, thinking about the upcoming trip I'd been planning with my friend. We'd booked a cabin in the mountains months ago, a cozy spot near a ski resort where we could unwind, drink hot chocolate, and enjoy some peace. Cindy was going to bring her dog, Brooke, had this whole Pinterest-inspired charcuterie board plan, and I was finally feeling like the holidays might actually be something to look forward to. Then my phone rang. It was my mom. I stared at the screen like it was some kind of mistake. I hadn't heard her voice in over a year and a half. We'd exchanged a few short texts, generic stuff like, "Happy birthday," or "Hope you're doing well," but no calls. Not even when I moved to a different state, almost 1,800 kilometers away. Not when I graduated. Not when I started my first full-time job. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello?" There was a pause, and then her voice, too bright, too forced. "Hi, sweetie. I was just calling to ask, what time should we expect you on Thursday?" At first, I didn't understand what she meant. "Expect me?" "For Thanksgiving," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "We haven't seen you in so long, and your brother's going to be there, and Aunt Carrie too. I figured you'd be driving in Wednesday night or Thursday morning." It hit me all at once. She expected me to come home. Out of nowhere, with no warning, no previous discussion, she just assumed I'd drop everything and travel 1,800 kilometers to sit at a table with people who hadn't made room for me in years. I hesitated, then told her I already had plans. A ski trip. Booked months ago. Non-refundable. I said it calmly, without any edge, just stating facts. That's when her tone changed. "Oh," she said. "Well, I just thought, since it's family." I didn't say anything. There was a sharp inhale, like she was gearing up to say something else, but whatever it was got tangled. Her voice started shaking. "I don't understand why you always choose them over us," she said, and I could hear the edge in it now, the old familiar guilt slipping through. "We're your family, Melanie." I reminded her, again, gently, that I had made plans, that I lived 3 states away, that it wasn't exactly a quick drive. She got emotional, her words turning fast and sharp, accusing me of turning my back on them, of abandoning the family. I said nothing, not because I didn't have things to say, but because I knew they wouldn't be heard. Then she hung up. Just like that. No goodbye. No talk soon. Just silence. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the screen like maybe it would explain what had just happened. And all I could think was, where was this energy when I graduated? Where was it when I moved? Where was it when I needed someone? It was the first real conversation we'd had in nearly 2 years. So, after that strange phone call with my mom before Thanksgiving, I figured that was the end of it, at least for a while. I went on the ski trip with Cindy and Brooke, and it was exactly what I needed. Peaceful. No drama. Just good friends, fresh snow, and actual laughter that didn't feel forced. I didn't think about my parents much that weekend, until I got the message from my dad. Came out of nowhere. No hello, no how are you? Just one sentence, sharp and cold. If you don't come home for Christmas, I'll stop paying for your college. I sat there staring at my phone, confused for a second. Then I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was so bizarre, so out of touch with reality that it didn't even make me angry, at least not right away. I graduated 4 years ago. Not only that, but they didn't even pay for my college. My grandmother did. She had a small inheritance from her late husband, and she told me from the beginning that she wanted me to have something of my own. She paid the tuition directly. My parents didn't contribute a single cent. So I sent a polite message back. I didn't want to escalate anything. I just wrote, "Hey Dad. I already graduated, remember? And Grandma paid for my tuition. Hope you're doing well." That was it. What I got back wasn't an apology or even an acknowledgement. It was a barrage. Accusations of betrayal, of selfishness, of abandoning the family. He said I was ungrateful, that I had turned my back on my roots, that I'd let outsiders replace blood. I just stared at the screen, heart racing, hands shaking. Not because I believed any of it, but because it confirmed what I had known deep down for a long time. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about missing me. It was about control. They didn't want me home because they missed my laugh or my stories or my presence. They wanted me there because it looked good to have all the kids home for the holidays, because it made the family picture complete, because it made them look like the kind of parents who raised a daughter that came home on Christmas. It was all calculation, and when that didn't work, when the emotional pull didn't get me back, they tried the next thing in their playbook, money. Even if it didn't make sense. They were bluffing with cards they didn't hold. And when I called the bluff, they lashed out. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. Not because I believed their words, but because even after all this time, some part of me had hoped they'd changed. That maybe, just maybe, they wanted me back for me. But they didn't. They wanted the idea of me. The performance, not the person. So, after the threats about my non-existent college payments and the guilt trips about skipping Christmas, I thought maybe the whole thing would finally die down. I thought my parents would get the hint and move on, the way they usually did when they didn't get their way. But then the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't my mom. It wasn't my dad. It was Anthony, my older brother. I hadn't heard his voice in over 10 months. We'd never been close, not really. Growing up, he was always distant. He had his own issues, his own struggles, and even though we lived under the same roof, we might as well have existed in different worlds. So when his name lit up on my screen, I just stared at it for a while, debating whether to even answer. But I did. "Hello?" I said cautiously. There was a pause. Then, "Hey Mel. It's Anthony." "I know," I replied, trying to sound neutral. "Everything okay?" He sighed, and I could already tell by the weight in his voice that this wasn't just a casual check-in. "Listen," he said, "I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but I think you deserve to know what's really going on." I felt my stomach tighten. He didn't drag it out. He just said it. "Mom and Dad want you to come home because they're planning to make you guardian of Daniel. Daniel, my brother with the most severe disability. The one who needed round-the-clock care. The one who had always lived with my parents because no one else could manage the constant appointments, the medications, the unpredictable episodes." I went quiet. Anthony kept talking, filling the silence with words I barely heard. Something about them getting older. About wanting to make plans for the future. About how I was the logical choice, since I was single, didn't have kids, had a stable life. He said they'd been talking about it for a while. That Christmas wasn't really about Christmas. That it was about sitting me down and making it official. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After a lifetime of being invisible, of being the background noise in a house too full of chaos, they suddenly remembered I existed, because they needed something. Because they wanted to hand me a responsibility so massive, so life-changing, that it should have come with 1,000 conversations and years of planning. But they hadn't even asked. They had just decided. I could feel the heat rising in my face, the sting in my eyes. I wasn't angry at Anthony. He sounded uncomfortable, maybe even sorry. But hearing it from him, not them, made it worse. Like they didn't even have the decency to talk to me directly. Like they thought they could guilt-trip me into showing up, make everything seem warm and fuzzy with holiday lights, and then drop this bomb on me over dinner. I asked him, did they seriously think I'd just say yes? He didn't answer that. I ended the call shortly after, politely but firmly. I needed space to process, to think. But in truth, I already knew the answer. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about reconnecting. It was about needing someone to carry the burden they were tired of carrying. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't going to be the quiet one who just accepted it. After Anthony's call, I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to make sense of how we even got here. But I guess deep down, I already knew. My parents had ignored me for years, almost my whole life, and now that they needed something huge, suddenly I was the only one they could think of. And when Anthony called again the next evening, I let it go to voicemail at first. Then I sat there, staring at the screen for a long time before finally calling him back. He answered on the first ring. Mel, he said, like he was trying to sound calm, but I could hear the urgency underneath. I know it's a lot, but you're the only one who's stable. The others can't do it. There it was. Not a request. Not a question. A statement. A setup. An expectation. You're the only one who's stable. I felt something click inside me. No, I said. There was silence on the line. I'm not doing it, I continued. I know you probably think that makes me cold or heartless or whatever, but I've spent my entire life being overlooked. I was the one who didn't need help, so I didn't get attention. I was the one who didn't scream or throw things or end up in the ER. So I got silence. For 28 years, they didn't have time for me. And now I don't have time for them. Anthony tried to interrupt, but I kept going. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not the forgotten daughter who suddenly shows up when you need someone to carry the weight. I built my life without them. Without their support. Without their love. I don't owe them anything. He didn't argue. He didn't agree either. We ended the call without resolution, and I knew then it would be the last one. That night I blocked their numbers. Mom. Dad. Anthony. I turned off notifications for their emails. When letters started arriving a few days later, handwritten, pleading, trying to twist my decision into some kind of betrayal, I threw them away unopened. I was done. No more being the afterthought. No more being the backup. No more pretending that silence and distance could suddenly be repaired just because they decided they were ready to see me. I chose peace, and that meant choosing distance. 2 weeks after I cut off all contact, after the blocked numbers, the ignored letters, and the firm decision to finally prioritize myself, I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Cindy and Brooke were both at work, and I hadn't ordered anything. I peeked through the peephole, and for a second I just froze. It was my mom. Standing there in a coat too thin for the weather, her hands clenched in front of her, her face tight and tired in a way I hadn't seen before. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there, heart racing, trying to decide what to do. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home. To walk away and let her think I'd moved or wasn't in. But something made me open the door, just enough to step out onto the porch and close it behind me. We stood there, awkwardly, staring at each other in the cold. Melanie, she said, her voice cracking immediately. Please. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need you to hear this. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. She took a breath, shaky and uneven. Your father is sick. Really sick. It's his heart. He's in and out of the hospital, and they're talking about surgery. I didn't know who else to turn to. She paused, like waiting for some crack in my expression, some sign that I'd soften. I just need you to be there for me, she whispered. Just be there. I took a breath, steady and deliberate. No, I said, my voice calm but firm. You didn't look for me until it was profitable for you. Until you needed something. She blinked, like the words had struck her physically. All these years, I continued, I could have been bleeding on the floor and you wouldn't have noticed. But now, when everything's falling apart, suddenly I matter. She didn't argue. She didn't try to justify anything. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't speak again. She just nodded once, slowly, then turned and walked down the steps, wiping at her face with the sleeve of her coat. She didn't look back. I watched her go until she turned the corner at the end of the block. Then I went inside and locked the door behind me. About a month after my mother showed up at my door, I got an email. It was from Anthony. The subject line was blank and the message was short. Just one sentence. Dad died yesterday. That was it. No greeting. No details. No hope you're doing okay, or thought you should know. Just a flat notification, like forwarding a shipping update or confirming a meeting cancellation. I stared at the screen for a long time. I read the sentence over and over again, waiting for something to hit me. A rush of grief. A pang of guilt. Some kind of wave of emotion that would knock me off my feet. But it didn't come. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't ask how he died, where it happened, or who was there. I didn't ask anything. I wasn't indifferent. I felt something, just not what they probably expected. Not sadness in the way they would have hoped. Not regret or shame. I felt calm. Like the weight I had been carrying in my chest since I was a child had finally lifted. Like the door had closed and this time, no one was going to open it again. I was not part of that life anymore. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to explain that to anyone. I didn't feel like I owed them anything. Not my time. Not my energy. Not even a reply. I just sat there in the quiet, breathing in the stillness. And I felt free.